The message flashed across every emergency channel in the Galactic Council's vast communication network. Red lights pulsed in diplomatic offices on 100 worlds. Computer systems automatically raised alert levels from green to amber. The warning was simple but caused immediate panic. Human warship Thunder of Terra has deviated from designated patrol route. In the Council's main observation center, Controller Reed's tentacles trembled as he verified the alert for the third time. The massive holographic display showed the human vessel's new heading with a bright red line, cutting through neutral space. This wasn't supposed to happen. Human ships always followed their routes. That was the agreement after the war. Get me visual confirmation. Reed clicked to his staff, his outer membrane changing color from its usual calm blue to an anxious purple. The younger controllers rushed to comply, their appendages dancing over control surfaces as they accessed the network of stealth observation platforms scattered throughout the sector. The image that appeared on the main screen made Reed's species equivalent of a heart skip a beat. The Thunder of Terra was indeed changing course, its massive engine arrays glowing with power. The ship's design still unsettled him, like it unsettled most Council races. While their own vessels followed the elegant principles of geometric harmony, human warships looked like predators. All angles and sharp edges, with weapon ports barely concealed beneath their armor plates. "Alert the Council," Reed ordered, his voice crackling with stress harmonics. Priority 1. In the Council's emergency chamber, the representatives of 20 different species gathered with unprecedented speed. Some appeared as holograms, their real bodies light years away. But their fear was equally palpable. They remembered the First Contact War. They all did. Elder Tom of the Mindari spoke first, his crystalline form reflecting the chamber's lights. "Let us not rush to panic," he said, his translator conveying his calming tones. "Humans are different, yes, but they have been loyal allies since the peace." "Different?" Ambassador Krull snorted, his massive form dominating his section of the chamber. "They're unpredictable. Their ships don't follow any logical combat patterns. Their crews ignore tactical algorithms that have been refined for millennia. And now they're breaking patrol routes." The chamber erupted in overlapping voices and translator signals. Some representatives demanded immediate military response. Others called for diplomatic contact. A few simply wished to know which direction the human ship was heading, hoping it was moving away from their territories. In a quieter corner of the chamber, Elder Tom connected to the historic records, displaying footage from the First Contact War. The assembled representatives fell silent as they watched the infamous Battle of Proxima Gate. The human fleet had been outnumbered 10 to 1. All tactical predictions had shown their defeat was mathematically certain. The humans won, not through superior technology or numbers, but through what the Council races had come to call controlled chaos. Human ships had broken formation, ignored standard engagement protocols, and used tactics that no war simulation had ever considered viable. They turned their own damaged ships into weapons, used civilian mining charges as impromptu space mines, and somehow coordinated their apparently random movements into a strategy that shattered the Council's fleet. The Thunder of Terra is a Defender-class warship, one of the military advisors noted, breaking the silence. Twice the size of the vessels from that battle. Its weapons systems. We all know its capabilities. Elder Tom interrupted gently. The question is, why has it changed course? The Council's long-range sensors tracked the human vessel's trajectory. It was heading deeper into neutral space, toward the outer trading routes. The ship's energy readings suggested it was accelerating, its powerful engines pushing it to speeds that made several representatives uncomfortable. "We should contact Earth Central," someone suggested. "It would take hours to get a response," another replied. By then, the chamber's main display suddenly lit up with new data. 3 more observation posts had reported the Thunder of Terra's movement. Its course was now clear. It was heading toward the Perseus armed trade routes, an area that had seen increased pirate activity in recent months. Elder Tom's crystalline form sparkled as he processed this information. Perhaps, he said slowly, we should wait and watch. Humans often have reasons for their actions that we do not initially understand. The council chamber hummed with nervous energy as they tracked the warship's progress. None of them could predict what would happen next. That was, after all, what made humans so terrifying and so fascinating. Captain Jack Miller stood at the main viewport of the Thunder of Terra, his weathered hands clasped behind his back. The stars stretched before him, each one a distant sun that might be hosting the disaster he was racing to prevent. The distress signal still pulsed on his personal tablet, its weak cry for help growing fainter with each passing minute. "Status report," he called out, his voice calm despite the tension running through the bridge. "Engineering reports all systems at battle readiness." First Officer Adams responded from her station. "The crew is at action stations. We're pushing the engines to 90% capacity." Miller nodded, his gray eyes fixed on the viewport. 20 years of service had taught him when rules needed to be broken. The council might not understand. They never did. But he couldn't ignore a distress call, even if it meant breaking patrol patterns. "Show me the signal analysis again," he ordered. The main holographic display lit up with data streams. The distress beacon's signature matched a civilian transport vessel, the Star Wanderer. Its last automated message reported multiple hostile ships with weapons charged. The council races had ignored it. Civilian ships in neutral space weren't their problem. "Sir," Lieutenant Cooper called from the sensor station, "long-range scans are picking up weapons fire at the target coordinates. Multiple ships engage." Miller's jaw tightened. "Time to intercept. 18 minutes at current speed." The captain finally turned from the viewport, facing his crew. They were all humans, all volunteers who understood what serving on a Defender-class warship meant. The Thunder of Terra wasn't just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's promise to prevent another war through strength and readiness. "Combat status," he asked. "All weapons systems green." Combat Officer Peters reported. "Shield generators at full power. Point defense grid online. Marines standing by in their drop pods." Miller allowed himself a small smile. The council races thought human ships were oversized and overarmed. They didn't understand that humanity had learned its lessons well. Peace through strength wasn't just a slogan, it was a promise. "Sir," Adams spoke up, her voice careful, "we're receiving automated warnings from 3 different council observation posts. They're tracking our course change." "Let them wash," Miller replied. "Send the delayed message explaining our actions. They can complain to Earth Central all they want. I'm not letting civilians die while bureaucrats debate protocol." The bridge crew shared knowing looks. They'd all seen it before. The council's rigid adherence to rules and regulations, their inability to understand why humans sometimes chose to ignore the safe path in favor of the right one. "New contact," Cooper suddenly called out. "Getting better sensor reads on the hostile ships. Reading 5. No, 6 vessels. Energy signatures match known pirate configurations. They're stripping the transport's outer hull." Miller's expression hardened. Pirates had grown bold in neutral space, counting on the council's bureaucracy to delay any response. They didn't expect a human warship to break patrol just to save one civilian transport. "Battle stations," he ordered, his voice carrying the weight of command. "Sound general quarters." The Thunder of Terra's internal lighting shifted to combat red. Klaxons sounded throughout the massive ship as crew members rushed to their positions. In the weapons bays, automated systems brought missile racks online. Marine teams checked their powered armor one final time. "Sir," Adams said quietly, "the council will see this as an aggressive action. We're supposed to report pirate activity, not engage." Miller turned to his first officer, his expression firm but understanding. "The council sees everything we do as aggressive. They still haven't figured out that humanity's greatest strength isn't our weapons or our ships. It's our unwillingness to stand by while the innocent suffer." He stepped forward, touching the tactical display. The pirate ships appeared as red dots, swarming around the wounded transport like vultures around dying prey. They had no idea what was coming. "Helm, plot an attack vector," Miller ordered. "We'll give these pirates a lesson in why human warships are feared across 3 sectors. And we'll show the Council that breaking protocol to save lives is the most human thing we can do." The Thunder of Terra surged forward, its massive engines pushing it faster through space. In its wake, observation posts tracked its movement with growing alarm. But aboard the bridge, Captain Miller and his crew felt only certainty. They had made the right choice, and they would face the consequences with the same determination that had earned humanity its place among the stars. The Galactic Council's emergency chamber erupted into chaos as the latest tracking data appeared on the main display. The Thunder of Terra wasn't just deviating from its patrol route. It was accelerating toward a known trouble spot in neutral space. The massive chamber, designed to amplify and project the voices of 20 different species representatives, now echoed with a cacophony of worried discussions. Ambassador Krell slammed his massive fist on his podium, causing the energy field around it to ripple. "They're going to start a war. These humans and their battle lust will drag us all into another conflict." The data shows a distress signal in that sector. Elder Tom's calm voice cut through the noise. His crystalline form sparkled as he projected the signal analysis for all to see. A civilian transport under attack. "That's not their jurisdiction," wheezed Representative Pohl, his breathing apparatus working overtime to keep up with his agitation. "They're supposed to report such incidents to the proper authorities." Elder Tom's crystal structure shifted colors slightly, a sign of mild frustration. "And how long would it take our response fleet to reach that sector? 6 hours? 8? We all know the proper channels take time." The chamber's central hologram updated again, showing the Thunder of Terra's projected course. The massive human warship was pushing its engines hard, moving with a purpose that made several representatives visibly uncomfortable. "We've received their delayed message," announced one of the junior controllers. The text appeared on everyone's personal displays. "Thunder of Terra responding to civilian distress SKL. Pirate activity, so needed. Taking immediate action to preserve life." "How typically human," muttered Ambassador Krull. "They think every problem can be solved with their warships. Would you prefer we return to the days before the humans joined the Council?" Elder Tom asked quietly. The chamber grew still as memories of those times surfaced. Before humanity's arrival, piracy had been rampant in neutral space. The Council's careful, measured responses had been easy for raiders to predict and avoid. A new alert flashed across the displays. The Thunder of Terra had increased power to its weapon systems. Several representatives immediately began calling for military vessels to be dispatched to the area. "To do what?" Elder Tom asked, his crystalline voice sharp. "To stop them from saving civilian lives. To enforce our protocols while innocent beings die. The protocols exist for a reason," Representative Pohl insisted. "If every species took matters into their own hands." "But they don't, do they?" Elder Tom interrupted. "Only the humans consistently act to protect others, even at cost to themselves, even when it breaks our precious rules." The chamber's mood shifted as data from the civilian transport reached them. The ship was being torn apart by pirate vessels. Its life support was failing. Hundreds of civilians were at risk. "I was there during the First Contact War," Elder Tom continued, his voice softer now. "I saw what made the humans different. We thought their ships were primitive, their tactics chaotic, their responses unpredictable. We were wrong. They simply value life over rules." The main display showed the Thunder of Terra closing in on the conflict zone. Its weapon systems were fully charged, its shields at maximum power. The pirates hadn't noticed it yet. They never expected a response this fast. "We should at least send observers," someone suggested. "To observe what?" Elder Tom asked. "Another demonstration of why human warships are both feared and respected. Perhaps that would be educational." Representative Pohl's breathing apparatus wheezed anxiously. The Council must take an official position on this violation of protocol. Very well. Elder Tom's crystal structure glowed brighter. I move that we acknowledge the thunder of Terra's response to a civilian emergency and defer any discussion of protocol violations until after the situation is resolved. The motion passed, though not unanimously. As the representatives watched the human warship close in on its target, Elder Tom added quietly, "Sometimes I think we fear human warships for the wrong reasons. We fear their weapons, their size, their power. But what truly terrifies us is simpler. They remind us of what we should have been doing all along." The chamber fell silent as the thunder of Terra prepared to engage the pirates. Whatever happened next would either validate their fears or their hopes about humanity's role in galactic peace. The pirates noticed the thunder of Terra too late. By the time their sensors picked up the massive human warship, it had already launched its first strike. Captain Miller watched from the bridge as his ship's initial volley of missiles curved through space in patterns that defied standard evasive algorithms. Multiple hits confirmed, Lieutenant Cooper reported from the sensor station. 2 pirate vessels breaking formation. The pirate fleet scattered like startled birds, abandoning their attack on the civilian transport. Their ships were fast and well-armed, but they had never faced a human warship before. They were about to learn why that was a serious mistake. "Status of the civilian transport?" Miller asked, his eyes tracking the tactical display. "Life support failing," Adams reported. "Hull breaches on decks 3 through 7. Reading approximately 300 survivors." Miller nodded grimly. "Launch rescue pods. Tell the Marines to prepare for emergency boarding and evacuation." He turned to his weapons officer. "Peters, show these pirates what happens when they prey on civilians." The thunder of Terra's main guns opened up, filling space with precisely calculated bursts of energy. But it wasn't the raw power that confused the pirates. It was the seemingly random targeting pattern. Human gunners didn't rely solely on computer targeting. They mixed intuition with technology, creating attack patterns that no defense computer could predict. "Sir," Cooper called out. Pirates attempting to regroup. 6 ships forming an attack wedge. Miller smiled slightly, exactly as expected. "Deploy the cargo containers." Earlier that week, the thunder of Terra had picked up a shipment of empty cargo containers. Now those containers burst open, revealing themselves as carefully disguised missile platforms. The pirate formation flew right into the trap. 2 more enemy ships disabled, Peters reported with satisfaction. The others are attempting to break away. But breaking away wasn't as simple as engaging their engines. The thunder of Terra had been hurting them, using its superior tactical position to force them into a carefully prepared killing zone. Every time they tried to flee, they found their escape routes blocked by precise weapons fire or the lingering threat of more hidden weapons platforms. "Marine teams report first wave of civilians secured," Adams announced. "Beginning emergency transport to our medical base." The remaining pirate ships made one final desperate attempt to coordinate their actions. Their ships moved in complex patterns, trying to confuse the human warship's targeting systems. It might have worked against an alien vessel that relied purely on combat computers. "Switching to manual targeting," Peters announced, his hands dancing over his console, showing them some good old human unpredictability. The thunder of Terra's response was devastating. Instead of following standard combat doctrine, the massive ship executed a series of maneuvers that seemed to make no tactical sense. It rolled, presenting what appeared to be vulnerable angles, only to catch the pirates in devastating crossfires. "Sir, picking up transmission from the pirate flagship," Cooper reported. "They're offering to surrender." Miller's expression hardened. "Tell them their surrender will be accepted only after every civilian is safely evacuated from that transport. Until then, we keep firing." The battle continued, but it wasn't really a battle anymore. It was a lesson. The thunder of Terra demonstrated why human warships were feared across known space. It wasn't just their size or their weapons. It was the combination of technology and human intuition of calculated strategy and controlled chaos. Last civilian group secured, Adams reported finally. Medical teams report all survivors stable. Miller nodded, allowing himself to relax slightly. Accept their surrender. Prepare boarding teams. I want those pirates in our break, and I want their flight records. We're going to find out if they're part of a larger operation. As the thunder of Terra's crews secured the battlefield and tended to the rescued civilians, observation posts throughout the sector transmitted the battle data back to the Galactic Council. They had just witnessed why human warships were both feared and respected, not just for their combat capability, but for their willingness to use that power to protect others. Send word to Earth Central, Miller ordered. Tell them we've rescued the civilians and defeated the pirate force. And add a note. Suggest increasing patrols in this sector. I don't want these pirates' friends getting any ideas. The rescued civilians stared in wonder at the inside of the Thunder of Terra's medical bay. Unlike the sterile, automated facilities they were used to on council ships, this place buzzed with human activity. Doctors and nurses moved quickly between beds, speaking to patients directly instead of relying on universal translators and medical robots. Your ship's design makes no sense, one of the rescued alien engineers told Adams as she checked on the survivors. You have manual backup systems for everything. Even your life support can be controlled without computers. Adams smiled while helping distribute emergency rations. That's because humans don't trust any system they can't fix with a wrench if needed. She didn't mention that this approach had saved countless lives during the First Contact War, when alien computer viruses had proven useless against manual controls. In the ship's massive engineering section, Chief Engineer Roberts supervised repairs while studying data from the battle. The pirates' weapons had barely scratched their shields, but what interested him more was how their shield modifications had performed. Look at these readings, he told his team, pointing to a holographic display. The pirates' targeting computers couldn't adapt to our random shield frequency changes. They kept shooting where they predicted our shields would be weakest, but we were never there. The engineering team had developed this technique after studying how Earth's deep-sea creatures changed their colors to confuse predators. Like most human innovations, it came from observing nature and asking what if, in ways that the Council races never considered. On the bridge, Captain Miller reviewed the battle footage with his tactical officers. The pirate ships had been well armed and their crews well trained, but they had relied too heavily on standard combat algorithms. It was a common weakness among species that trusted computers more than instinct. Their formation was perfect, Peters noted, replaying the pirates' final attack run. Textbook perfect. That's why it failed. They flew exactly where their training said they should, which made them predictable. Miller nodded. Show me the cargo container deployment again. The holographic display showed how they had turned simple shipping containers into improvised weapons platforms. It was the kind of adaptation that made other species nervous, the human tendency to see weapons in everyday objects, to turn anything into a tactical advantage. In the brig, the captured pirates watched in confusion as human Marines methodically dismantled and studied their weapons. Instead of just confiscating them, the humans were learning from them, figuring out how they worked and already thinking of countermeasures. Why do they do this? One pirate asked another. Why not just lock the weapons away? A veteran Marine overheard and grinned. Because next time someone tries to use these against civilians, we'll know exactly how to stop them. The Thunder of Terra's repair crews worked through the ship's night cycle, not just fixing damage, but improving systems based on what they'd learned in the battle. It was another uniquely human trait that puzzled other species, the constant drive to modify, improve, and adapt. In her office, Adams compiled her report for Earth Central. She included not just the battle details, but also the innovations they'd discovered under pressure. The shield frequency modulation, the cargo container trick, the new targeting patterns they'd developed on the fly. All would be shared with other human ships. You should have seen their faces, she told Miller during their debrief. When we started moving those containers into position, The pirates thought we were trying to save cargo. They never expected us to turn shipping containers into weapon platforms. Miller smiled. That's always been humanity's advantage. We don't just think outside the box. We turn the box itself into something useful. The rescued civilians were gradually being transferred to Council medical ships that had finally arrived on scene. Many of them lingered, fascinated by how different the human ship was from what they were used to. They watched engineers rewiring systems, Marines modifying weapons, and medical staff adapting alien treatment protocols to work better with their equipment. I've heard stories about human warships, one civilian told Adams before leaving, about how they're always changing, always different every time you encounter them. I never understood why until now. You don't just adapt to survive. You adapt to protect others. The Galactic Council's emergency chamber fell silent as Captain Miller's full report appeared on their screens. The human captain's message was direct and unapologetic, backed by combat footage that showed both the rescue operation and the brutal efficiency of the Thunder of Terra in battle. 312 civilians saved. Elder Tom read aloud, his crystalline form glowing softly. 6 pirate vessels captured or destroyed. A major threat to neutral space shipping eliminated. He paused, letting the numbers sink in, all because one human warship decided to break protocol. Ambassador Krell shifted uncomfortably in his gravity chair. The combat footage played again on the main screen, the Thunder of Terra turning simple cargo containers into weapon platforms, its shields changing frequency in patterns that defy prediction, its guns firing with deadly accuracy guided by human intuition rather than combat computers. The captain's message continues, a junior controller announced. Tactical analysis suggests this pirate group was responsible for at least 12 previous attacks on civilian vessels in neutral space, attacks that our standard patrols failed to prevent because they followed predictable routes and response patterns. Representative Pohl's breathing apparatus wheezed rapidly. They're criticizing our security protocols. This is outrageous. No, Elder Tom corrected gently. They're showing us why those protocols need to change. Look at the rescue footage. The display shifted to show the Thunder of Terra's medical bay. Civilians of 6 different species were being treated by human doctors and nurses who adapted their techniques on the fly, mixing advanced medicine with what looked like improvised field surgery. The council representatives watched in silence as human innovation saved lives that might have been lost waiting for species-specific medical ships to arrive. The human captain has appended a request. The controller continued. He's asking for permission to extend their patrol route to cover these neutral space lanes permanently. The chamber erupted in overlapping arguments. Some representatives immediately opposed giving humans more authority in neutral space. Others saw the practical benefits of having such powerful and responsive ships protecting civilian traffic. You're all missing the point, Elder Tom interrupted. Look at the timestamp on the original distress call, and then look at when the Thunder of Terra responded. The data appeared on their screens. The human warship had moved to help before receiving any official authorization. Before even sending their own message explaining their actions, they had acted first and dealt with politics later, prioritizing lives over protocols. This is why we fear them, Elder Tom continued. Not because of their weapons or their ships, but because they remind us of our own failures. While we debated proper procedures, they saved lives. While we worried about jurisdiction, they eliminated a threat to civilian shipping that we had failed to handle through proper channels. The combat footage played one final time. The council representatives watched as the Thunder of Terra demonstrated why human warships were so feared, not just their power, but their adaptability. The way they turned defensive shields into weapons, cargo containers into traps, and standard patrol routes into opportunities for rapid response. The captain's final note, the controller said quietly. It reads, "The Thunder of Terra stands ready to assist any civilian vessel in distress, regardless of species, jurisdiction, or political considerations. We will not ignore calls for help while waiting for proper authorization. This is not a request for permission. It is a statement of fact." Ambassador Krell's massive fist clenched. Typical human arrogance. No, Elder Tom corrected. Typical human compassion, backed by the strength to act on it. They're not asking us to change our rules. They're simply telling us that when lives are at stake, they will act first and accept the consequences later. The council chamber buzzed with discussion as representatives debated how to respond. The evidence was clear. The human way of doing things, however unpredictable and chaotic it seemed, had saved hundreds of lives and eliminated a significant threat. But accepting this meant acknowledging that their own careful, regulated approach to crisis response had failed those same civilians. We should draft an official response, Representative Pohl suggested. Why? Elder Tom asked. The Thunder of Terra isn't waiting for our approval. They're already back on patrol, ready to break protocol again if it means saving lives. Perhaps instead of responding, we should be learning. 1 month after the Thunder of Terra's intervention, the Galactic Council faced an unexpected situation. Their long-range sensors detected multiple warships breaking formation across different sectors. Not human warships this time. Council vessels from various species were moving to respond to civilian distress calls without waiting for official authorization. Elder Tom stood in the observation center, watching the tactical display with quiet satisfaction. The dots representing Council warships moved with newfound purpose, some even attempting to copy the unpredictable patterns that made human vessels so effective. They're all violating standard patrol protocols. Controller Reed noted, his tentacles waving in agitation. Just like the humans do. No, Elder Tom corrected. They're evolving, just like the humans taught us to do. The main screen showed a Mindari cruiser responding to a distress call from a mining colony. The ship's captain had cited the Thunder of Terra protocol, a phrase that had spread through the Council fleet like wildfire. It wasn't an official protocol, but that hadn't stopped crews from adopting it. In his office at Earth Central Command, Captain Miller read the latest reports with a slight smile. The Thunder of Terra's actions had sparked something unexpected, not fear or criticism, but inspiration. Other species were starting to understand that rules existed to save lives, not to prevent saving them. Sir, Adams called from the doorway. The Council's official response to our action report just arrived. Miller took the datapad, expecting a formal reprimand. Instead, he found a request. The Council wanted human tactical advisors assigned to their rapid response fleets. They wanted to learn how to combine their advanced technology with human adaptability and intuition. They're finally getting it, Adams said, reading over his shoulder. It was never about our weapons or our ships. It was about our willingness to act. The Thunder of Terra itself was back on patrol, but not along its old predetermined route. The Council had approved a new system of flexible patrol zones, allowing ships to respond to threats without waiting for sector-by-sector authorization. The rescued civilians had spread stories about the human warship throughout neutral space, changing how other species viewed these massive vessels. In the Council's main chamber, Elder Tom presented the latest statistics. Pirate attacks in neutral space had dropped by 60%. Response times to distress calls had been cut in half. Ships of all species were working together, sharing information and resources in ways that would have been impossible under the old rigid protocols. We feared human warships because they were different, Elder Tom told the assembled representatives. We saw their unpredictability as a threat, their willingness to break rules as a danger. We were wrong. They showed us that true strength lies not in following protocols, but in knowing when to break them for the right reasons. Ambassador Krell, who had once been the loudest critic of human methods, stood to speak. I visited the Thunder of Terra last week, he announced. I saw how they train their crews to think independently, to adapt to any situation. It's chaos by our standards, but it works. Perhaps it's time we admitted that sometimes chaos is exactly what's needed. The Council chamber, once a place of rigid procedure, had changed too. Representatives now spoke more freely, offered solutions instead of just citing regulations. The human influence had spread beyond their warships to affect how the entire Council operated. On the Thunder of Terra's bridge, Miller received a new distress call. This time, he didn't have to break protocol to respond. The new guidelines explicitly authorized immediate action. But more importantly, he wasn't alone. Sensors showed 2 Council ships already moving to assist. "Send word to our Council allies," he ordered. "Tell them we'll coordinate our response. Let's show them how humans work together in a crisis." As the massive warship changed course, observation posts across 3 sectors noted its movement. But this time, there was no panic, no emergency sessions. Instead, other ships moved to support it, creating a response network that would have been impossible just a month ago. The Thunder of Terra's legacy wasn't fear or dominance, but understanding. It had shown the galaxy that rules existed to protect life, and that breaking them to save lives wasn't just acceptable, it was necessary. Human warships were still feared, but now they were also understood. They weren't just weapons of war, but symbols of humanity's greatest strength: the will to act, to adapt, and to protect, no matter the cost. As Miller watched his ship move into position alongside Council vessels, he realized they had achieved something greater than military victory. They had taught the galaxy that true strength lay not in blind obedience to rules, but in knowing when to break them for the right reasons. The Thunder of Terra had changed more than patrol routes. It had changed how an entire galaxy thought about duty, responsibility, and the true meaning of protection.